I wanted to do this video touching on the concept by Neely Fuller Jr. May he rest in peace. He wrote a book about how non-whites should respond in effectively dealing with a system of injustice on an individual basis called the Compensatory Conduct Code Book. And I purchased the book, I read it, and he has a chapter in the book about sex. And his theory is that all 9 areas of human activity, education, economics, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war are all dominated by injustice, and that all non-white people are victims in this grand scheme, and everything that the non-whites do generally benefits the system. However, we should try to promote a system of justice. Now, he says that the only people who can actively produce justice are the ones who control the system. But it's still right and just for those who are victims of the system to verbally and through action promote justice. So in the area of sex, which he states that we're all either thinking about engaging in, or we're reacting to others who engage in it. And he says outside of this system of injustice, the need to procreate and the energy behind it is the strongest force in the known universe, right? And I think that we can all agree as human beings that the will to survive is extremely strong. So get into this message. He has a chapter where he talks about relationships, and it's a very deep chapter, and he states that the relationships between non-whites, as long as this system of injustice exists, will never be in harmony. He states that it can be mutual, but it can never be harmonious, meaning that both people in a relationship or a marriage, he states that in order to be married, in order to have a marriage, one male or with multiple females, one male with one female, or one male or one female with one male, or with multiple females, in whatever way combination of it a person wants to interpret the marriage. That since the two people, we're going to use two people in this example, the two non-whites, right, often referred to as black, or it could be Latino, it could be Asian, it could be a number of these different categories that have been assigned to us. But all non-white people, especially black people who have been assigned the bottom caste in this caste system, can never be in an harmonious relationship, because the external force, the government, the external force that controls the non-white people, will not allow them to have harmony. Now, many people will say, well, my grandmother was married, or my grandfather was married, or my parents were married. Like, what do you mean? Well, his theory, right? His theory is that when the non-whites have to rely on a system of injustice for all of their needs, if they get sick, they have to go to the hospital. They don't control what goes on in the hospital. They don't control they can demand justice, but they can't produce justice, right? For jobs. Non-white people can create businesses, but they don't control the policies that go in to having favorable business practices, favorable taxes, a favorable economy. They can purchase a home or a house, but they don't control the market. They don't control the prices. And so these things that they do not control controls them. And so the relationship can be mutual, meaning both parties want to have the relationship, but it can never be harmonious. Now, I think that his theory, which was created in the 70s, is a very interesting theory. And if we look 30, 40, 50 years later at his theory, right, we can see that what he was talking about in 1974 when he wrote the book, and he passed away in February of 2025, still speaking about this same theory. And my favorite part of the book was probably this, because human relationships are something that we naturally engage in. But he says that in this system of injustice, we have to seek to only come together for constructive purposes, and to avoid one another, because we have been infected with a poisonous mentality that could lead to destruction, right? And so let's look at 2025. Marriage rates across the board suffer. Now, when he wrote this theory, he stated that only whites who are not victims of the system can engage in marriage because they have the right to do so. But non-whites, while they can call themselves married, he drew an example of being in a prison and stated that if two prisoners are in a prison and they say that they're married, right? To the free people on the outside, that would seem illogical. Like, how could these two people who are in the prison call themselves married, or but they don't have the agency to exercise their freedom, right? And so he stated that until this system of injustice is defeated and replaced with a system of injustice, that the only thing that a marriage can do is help to promote the system of injustice. Now, let's look at how when people get married, oftentimes in modern times, divorce within the first 10 years, and what happens? Their property are divided. The property is divided. Their money, their finances are tied up in litigation. The offspring suffer if they have any offspring. And when we see a pattern of so many people getting divorced, when we see a pattern, we have to follow the pattern. We have to ask questions. Why is this happening? Why is this taking place? Who created this system, right? And what can we do to effectively get into a situation where we can have life and have it more abundantly? So I would love to hear what you think. I wanted to post an excerpt of the book, me reading the book, which I may do. It was taking a long time to download, so that was just a summary of his thought. But I would love to hear what you all have to say and what you all think moving forward. I have tried to argue against his theory. That's my place. I've tried to look at it and take the position of maybe he was wrong, because we all want to have marriages, right? For the most part, most people, if it wasn't for an external force, because when most people say that they don't want to have a family, usually, or they don't want to have kids, what they're really getting at is that they don't want to be punished by this external force. They don't want the government to dominate them if things go badly. Why would things go badly? Well, not necessarily because it would be no longer mutual. Things will go badly because, as he stated, they can't produce harmony. They cannot produce a harmonious environment. And so the two people will blame one another for the environment, right? The nurture part of the game. But the nature of the humans is to want to have a family. It takes two to tango. It takes a village to raise a child. When people are born, they have a mom and a dad. So quite naturally, we would think that, it's natural to want a family. It's actually unnatural, or it goes against the nature of humans to not want a family, right? But this is a behavior that we had to adopt to, because of this system of injustice which dominates the entire planet. Is the reigning government according to Neely Fuller Jr. Now, as always, he states that this is either true or it is false. And if it is false, I would love to hear your opinion. Peace.